If your home didn't sell last weekend, relax. You're not failing, you're just in a completely different housing market. Sellers across the country are confused. Homes that used to fly off the market in just days are now sitting for weeks, in some cases months. Showings are down, feedback is vague, and price reductions are back on the table with nearly 39% of all active listings having some sort of price cut. So if you're asking what has changed, well, the answer is nearly everything. In this video, I'll show you exactly why this housing market feels different, what's driving buyer hesitation, and most importantly, how to price, prepare, and position your home to sell today, not in the past. But my question to you, are you selling in today's market or last year's? The reality is both buyers and sellers have short-term memories, and many of the home buyers in today's market have never bought a home before, so they don't know what a traditional housing market looks like, feels like, but rather all they know is what their friends have told them, what their parents have told them, and what they've seen over the last couple of years. But the shift that every seller out there must understand at the moment, this is not 2022, this is not 2023. In those markets, we had historically low interest rates. We had panic buying out there. We had demand being pulled forward because affordability was at such a low point, which unfortunately gave a lot of sellers out there unrealistic expectations. But the biggest difference in 2025 versus those markets is that the urgency is gone, because now we have mortgage rates sitting somewhere between 6.5% and 7%, which is over double from the lows that we saw back in the pandemic. And because of this new normal with regard to interest rates, housing affordability is sitting at some of the worst levels that we've seen in a couple of decades. And because of that, we have a lot of buyers sitting on the sidelines not willing to pull the trigger. Now, here's the crazy thing. Buyer demand in 2025 is very similar to 2024, although it might not feel like it. The biggest difference this year versus last year is that we have way more inventory on the market, over 32% nationwide, which means for many states out there, inventory is back at those pre-pandemic levels, which has buyers demanding value and negotiability. They want to be able to negotiate on a property, especially when it's been sitting on the market for any period of time. And at the moment, only 18% of homes out there are selling at the listing price, whereas last year it was somewhere around 27%. In addition to that, we have fewer homes going under contract, about 60% today versus almost 70% last year. So at the moment, we have a couple of different factors impacting how buyers are looking at the housing market. One is just buyer fatigue. There are buyers out there that have been in the market this entire time looking for the right home. And now in some cases, the right home still has not presented itself. If you're in the Northeast, that market is still really, really competitive. Multiple offers going above the asking price, doing crazy things in some cases in order to get your offer accepted. Whereas if you're located in Florida, for example, and you're looking condos, say in South Florida, chances are there's a lot of inventory to choose from, which actually might be leading to the fear of overpaying for that home. So you might be kind of pushing back on the idea of buying because you don't want to get stuck in a property that's worth considerably less just a couple of months or years down the road. And if that wasn't enough, affordability is sitting at all-time lows. So all of those things together are essentially slowing things down in the housing market, which is causing it to look entirely different than what we've seen over the last 5 years. So what I want to do here is take a minute and talk about the seller panic. It's this idea out there where sellers are misreading the market, thinking because they've got no offers on their property that their agent has failed. Their agent isn't doing their job. Now, in some cases, that could be true. Maybe your agent isn't doing the things that they should be doing. Professional photography, video, 3D tours, putting it out on social media, basically getting this whole exposure overload where your property's essentially everywhere. But in my experience, that's usually not the case. Now, most agents are doing some form of it. Maybe they're not doing it all, which I believe you should be doing it all, especially in this market, because exposure drives demand, demand drives price. So the more exposure we can get on a property, essentially the higher price we're going to get for that home. But here's the thing, most agents operating in today's market haven't sold property in a normal market. We've been in this uptrend ever since 2010, where homes have essentially been trending up, and days on the market really haven't been that long. Now, if your agent's only been in the market for a couple of years, then they really haven't experienced a normal market where things don't sell in a weekend or don't sell in a couple of weeks or a month. And so those agents, on top of the sellers, are starting to panic a little bit. What did I do wrong? And the reality is maybe you did nothing wrong. Maybe it's just the market. But here's the reality. Even in the current market that we're in right now, homes are still selling. There are buyers out there still looking for the right property. Even with higher interest rates, even with lower affordability, there are buyers where it's the right time in their life to become a homeowner. And so they're out there shopping. So if your home is getting absolutely no showings and it's been on the market for a couple of weeks, then in my opinion, just looking at that and hearing that, your home is probably priced too high, and so high that buyers think you're completely unrealistic and they're not even willing to negotiate. Now, in addition to that, maybe your home is getting showings but no offers. Well, in that case, maybe the home doesn't show that well. Maybe there are things in that home that need to be fixed that buyers don't want to have to address themselves, or maybe not at that price. So it could be a combination of the property. It could be a combination of the price. But with that said, if your home is getting showings, then that tells me that the price is not that far out of line. One of the biggest differences I'm seeing in this market is the buyer's mindset in 2025 has shifted a little bit because they see more options out there, because they see uncertainty in the economy, the unknowns out there. They're being a little bit more cautious. And they're out there thinking, if I'm going to pay double what it was to buy that home in 2020, then that house must be near perfect. It must have all the bells and whistles. It must be upgraded enough for me to at least live in and do my upgrades over time. Remember, buyers are watching a lot of HGTV where homes are picture perfect. They're model ready. They show really, really well on TV. And the expectation for a buyer, especially at where prices are now, is that they should be getting exactly that, which is leading a lot of buyers out there to shop for home versus rush out and buy one. There were times during the pandemic where I wrote 20 plus offers for different home buyers looking at different properties. They would make an offer on the very first one they saw because they loved that home and they knew how competitive it was. And that would continue over a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of months. But what you're seeing now is buyers are seeing more and more homes without writing that offer, because they're not only looking for the perfect home, they're looking for the perfect location in the perfect school district. All of the things that they feel like they should get at that price point, they now want. There's no longer that FOMO where they feel like they're missing out on a property. They now see different options, even though it's historically low in most markets. They don't realize that even though inventory's climbed, it could still climb considerably more from here in a lot of markets out there. They're just seeing double the inventory that they saw in 2020. So they think, wow, now I have some control. And the reality is it's still a seller's market out there in most markets. But buyers are slowly gaining a little bit more traction, a little bit more control, a little bit more leverage. And in many cases, that has them thinking that they should get a discount because they're seeing more inventory, because they're seeing that they're gaining a little bit of traction. They think, now I'm in control. When the reality is they're not in control if you're doing things right as a seller. But there is a lot of uncertainty out there with the potential of rising inflation, the potential of a recession down the road. We don't truly know what's going to happen, which is causing buyers to be a little bit more patient, and on the flip side, causing sellers to panic. Now, before we talk about how to sell in this market, how you should think as a seller, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up if you find any value in my videos at all. And if you want to stay updated on everything about how to sell your home for top dollar, do me a favor and consider subscribing to the channel. So the most important thing when it comes to real estate is realizing that real estate is local. Not getting caught up in the national headlines, not worrying about what's happening in a completely different state, because real estate can vary within the same city, within the same neighborhood. So as a seller, it's very, very important to understand your micro market. I'm located here in Huntington Beach, California, and within my city, we have 4 different zip codes. And what I can tell you is within those zip codes, there are variances in how properties are selling. Remember, headlines don't sell homes. Local data is what sells properties. Your home should be priced based on what's happening in your local market. You know, comparables within your neighborhood, ideally. You should be pricing according to that. You shouldn't be pricing as to where your neighbor sold their home in 2022. You need to be looking at 2025. You need to be looking within the last 90 days of 2025, because interest rates and buyer demand have been fairly consistent during that period of time. So it's more or less the same market, but you can't go back to September of, say, last year when interest rates were at 6%, because that's a little bit of a different market at that time. Now, in many cases, home prices are still up from that point, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's true in every single market out there. I just had a seller contact me recently that was in Dallas, and they wanted to talk about selling their home because it wasn't selling. Now, they reached out on my live show on my main channel where I take questions and I answer them, and they were asking me what they should do, and that they bought the home for $500,000 in 2022, and now they're selling it for $450,000. So they lost $50,000. Remember, the peak in home prices was May of 2022. So in some markets, home prices have come down since then, whereas other other markets they've gone up. So you just need to understand what's happening around you so that you can make the best decision for yourself. You should know the average days on market. You should also know what the inventory levels are. What is the competition you're looking at? Who would also look at your house and look at another house? What are the differences in those homes? How is that home priced? That's the information that your real estate agent should be diving in with you so that you can price accordingly. Which leads me into talking about strategic pricing from day one. There are really 3 different ways to price your home. One is you overprice it, right? You set this expectation based off something in your head that your home is worth X, and that's the price that you want for it. And many sellers do this because they say, hey, I'm going to leave room for negotiation in this price. I don't want to come and list it at, say, $1 million, because then if they come and offer me $950, I don't have any room for negotiation. Instead, I'm going to list it at $1,050,000 or $1,001,000 and give myself some room for negotiation. Well, the problem with that is you're overpricing your home, which could lead some buyers to say, I don't even want to see that property. It's overpriced. The seller's probably not realistic. And in many cases, that's going to lead you as the seller to have to do price reductions in order to get back in line with where the market is. And if the market is stable or in some cases declining, that means you're playing catch up from a seller, which in some cases makes you look desperate. Now, the second way is that you can price it based on where comparable homes in your market are selling, which in my opinion is the best way to price. I think you should look at other homes in your neighborhood in similar condition and try to price accordingly. That way, when buyers are coming in, have conversations, and you're talking to other agents, you have other homes that you can mention and reference in that conversation. Now, in my experience, this usually ends up with the seller netting the most amount of money, getting top dollar in the quickest amount of time. Because the third way is underpricing your home. Now, if you underprice it just slightly, say you think it's worth $1 million and you price it at $980 or $975. That to me is not really underpricing it. That's pretty much in line with fair market value on that home. But even then, I think you should price it at what you think it's worth. But underpricing it, say you're going, $100,000 under, you're going $900,000 versus $1 million. Yes, that is going to draw attention to your property. But what if it doesn't draw the attention that you want on that property? What if in your head you think it's going to get you 10 offers and they're going to bid against each other and you're going to end up over what we originally thought it was worth because those buyers are fighting for one another? What if you don't get that type of activity? What if you get one offer or maybe no offers in that case and your home is sitting on the market? Now you're in this position where you've priced it under what you think it's worth. So anytime a buyer might come in and make an offer at, say, your purchase price, you're offended because they're not offering the amount that you thought it was worth. So now you're countering them to a higher amount than you originally have it listed. In fact, I just had some buyers looking at a home in LA that was priced at $1,275,000. We offered $1,300,000. They countered us back to $1,450,000. So they wanted to counter us $100,000 more than we offered, and we offered $75,000 more. So my question was, why didn't you just put the home on the market at $1,450,000 to begin with? Because now you've set unrealistic expectation for any buyers looking at that home. I didn't believe the value was there at that price. I was looking at comparables. I told my client, I don't think that's even close to what it's worth. So in that case, my clients completely walked away. Whereas had they done that from the start, maybe my clients wouldn't have looked at it, or maybe they would have, and they would have put in an offer closer to that amount that they wanted. So in my opinion, as a seller, you don't chase the market, you should lead it. Because this isn't the market where buyers out there are doing crazy things. They're not waiving appraisals. They're not waiving inspections anymore. And in many cases, they're not going above the asking price unless they know there are multiple offers out there. So in my opinion, your goal as a seller is to be the best value on the block, to be the home that everyone wants to see and that they believe is priced right based on what's happening in that neighborhood. Now, the next thing I want you to do as a seller is dial in the presentation of your home. The thing to understand about today's buyers is that they're visual. They're scrolling fast on Zillow or Redfin through these websites. They're looking at a lot of different properties. So with that being said, your home needs to stand out. So not only should your real estate agent be doing professional photos and true video for that home and 3D tours, they need to be giving the buyer everything they want to be able to see that home in a couple of different ways. On top of that, so as a seller, you should clean the home. You should declutter it. You should paint when necessary. You should absolutely stage it when your furniture is not perfect. But my advice here is before you go out and do all of these different things, make sure you're talking to a professional real estate agent. Talk to an agent in your market that understands your local market, ideally the person you're looking to hire, and ask them what you should do in order to maximize price. They should have an idea of the things that you can do to help you not only maximize price, but maximize time and ultimately help you accomplish your goals. Now, if you're not sure where to start, do me a favor and check that link in the description of the video. You can work with me and my team directly, or I'm happy to refer you to a real estate agent in your market that works exactly like I do. Now, when it comes to presentation, remember, a good presentation will still not make a bad price work, but it could amplify the right price, right? So not only do you want to have the right price, you want to have the presentation dialed in. In addition to that, you want to be flexible. You don't want to appear desperate. So as a seller, don't get stuck on this whole as is. I'm not doing any repairs. I'm not going to do anything to my house. This is the way it is. If you're buying it, this is what you get. No, you need to be flexible. You need to be flexible on closing dates, concessions, repairs. You need to be willing to work with the other side in some cases in order to make deals work. Now, that doesn't mean you need to give away the farm. You don't necessarily need to replace the roof or do some high ticket repairs. And you don't necessarily have to meet people in the middle. But selling a home is some give and take. Both parties need to feel like they're getting a good deal. Now, the next thing you need to have on your side as a seller in today's market is a proactive real estate agent, someone that's giving you updates. They're giving you showing feedback, even if it's not necessarily feedback you want to hear. They should be giving it to you because if it's things that you can change, you need to know that so that maybe you can make adjustments. Now, if it's the location or there's something with the house that can't be changed, then there's nothing you can do, and then that's just not the right buyer. But you need an agent being willing to tell you things that you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. Because the last thing you want to do as a seller is chase the market. Remember, when homes are sitting on the market, days on the market are adding up, buyers think one of two things. Either the home is overpriced or something's wrong with it. Now, in some cases, they think both. But understand, just because we're in today's market and homes are sitting on the market for a couple of weeks or in some cases a couple of months, that's not an act of desperation. That doesn't mean that there's something entirely wrong with your home. Doesn't necessarily mean it's overpriced either. It could use some price adjustments in some cases, but just remember the market's changing. Like where I'm located right now, the average days on market's about 50 days on market for certain price points. Higher price points, sometimes it's months, sometimes even pushing close to a year once you get into those super luxury price points. Now, I realize selling a home is an emotional process, right? It's where you raised your family. There's a lot of memories in that property, and you want to maximize price because in many cases, you're using that money to buy your next home because you don't want to lose potential dollars that could help you on the other side. And I get that, but if you have the right agent on your side, they're trying to help you maximize that price. Now, I know there are agents out there just looking for a listing. They'll take it at any price and they'll ask you to reduce, and just so they can get it sold. That's not how it should be done. Your agent should be giving you a price up front, should be able to back it by comparables, and then be able to give you guidance through that process. Tell you what's happening locally, what's happening with showings, and just help you come to the right decision. Maybe the decision is not to sell the home and you just stay put. Or maybe the decision is to make a price improvement on that property, get it further down in price so that maybe more buyers come out of the woodwork, or maybe somebody that's been watching it gets them off the fence and now they're interested in that home. But it should never be you have to do this. It should rather be a suggestion from your agent so that ultimately it aligns with your goals. Selling in the current market takes patience. It takes resilience. And in some cases, you're going to get lowball offers. You're going to get feedback that might not make sense to you. But if your goal is to sell your home, not just list it on the market and see what happens, but to actually close on that property, that means you're going to have to align your current expectations with the current buyer behavior that's happening out there right now. Now, with that, this isn't a broken housing market. It's just a more traditional housing market, one that is normalizing. And homes are still selling, but those sellers out there that aren't going to adapt are likely going to get left behind. So if you're ready to sell, make sure you price smart, present strong, and stay flexible through that process. And if this video helped you reset your expectations or gave you any clarity, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. I'm here every single week doing videos to help you maximize your home's price and your time. So if you feel like you could benefit, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. And do me a favor while you're at it, let me know in the comments, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now in the current housing market? Let me know below.